politicians, leaders, rock stars. The people decide everything. New artists put out music for free. I like making money, don't you?
An honor to have you on the show, Gene. And I wanted to start off by asking you, as a fellow Beatles fanatic, to describe.
I thought, wait a minute. I thought it was Beatles instead of Beatles.
Well, I'm too
Beatles.
posh to say Beatles.
Oh, all right then. Yeah, here I am working my fingers to the bone all day.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
Americans
it's
Americans have
very. It's,
Americans have no idea what you guys talk about with posh or North or in it because you still have vestiges of the class system. In America, it's the word "you" is all encompassing.
so
High,
you
low.
don't have a class system. There's a class system in America, though. It's just not accent based.
No, the class system is based. It doesn't exist because who the fuck do you think you are is actually a common phrase.
Well, it can be a common
Anybody?
phrase in England, depending on where you go.
Yeah, not here. It's the land of the rejects after all, from your jail cells and all that. No, it's anathema. Well, that's a big word like gymnasium. No, it's anti-class. In the same way, perhaps you may think, well, in India they've got a caste system. It's an extreme version of your class system.
Mm. Well, the class system in England, though, is it's not a good thing. Like to have a posh voice is something that you get, uh, you somewhat get bullied
I
for. It's a
under,
bad thing these days. Like if
under,
you come
you know,
across as being overprivileged or anything like that, it's like,
understood, but you can have very light skin the way you do and rap and talk as ghetto as anybody who can't form a sentence.
what here in America.
America.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah. Well, the countries work in very different ways. I have to say, I would prefer to live in America these days. England has somewhat gone to shit, as they say, unfortunately.
I have no comment, but I'm a big Anglophile, as you know.
Well, yeah, and so can you describe how you fell in love with the music and the personas of the Beatles, or should I say Beatles?
Well, interestingly, we emigrated legally to America. My mother and I became legal immigrants, and I was about 8.5, and I couldn't speak a stick of English, could speak fluent Hungarian, Hebrew. Uh, as a matter of fact, Turkish. Originally, I had a Turkish babysitter, some Spanish and a few other languages, and then forgot all that when we came to America and had to learn how to speak proper English or American. And but this was pre-Beatles. The first music I heard of, just like the Beatles, was black music. The groovy, the royal, that thing that came from the loins of the poorest, least educated, least qualified people, perhaps on the planet, to make popular modern music, which is to say, former children of slaves. So blues, jazz, and so on and so forth. The first music I heard was, Little Richard, Fats Domino, and all that, especially Chuck Berry. Interestingly, life is bizarre. I became a huge fan of Chuck Berry early on, just because, it made you move instead of no milk today. They can't, the old Herman Hermit song. I don't know if you know that one. It was a minor hit for Herman and the Hermits.
I
Have you
know
heard of
Hermits. Yes, they're another group from Liverpool, right?
Herman and the Hermits became Herman's Hermits?
And they had a very famous song.
Oh, they had many. I'm Henry the Eighth, I am Henry the Eighth, I am. Oh, they had 20 major hits. Of course, before you were born, because you're 12 now, right?
No,
You've heard that.
I've got an okay knowledge of music. I mean, I'm better versed in Fats Domino and Little Richard and Chuck
Yes.
Berry than in Herman's Hermits. But I think they kind of like a Liverpool pop group, kind of a bit like Jerry and the Pacemakers and to
Well,
a certain extent like the
with,
Beatles early on.
the thing is that black music, Chuck Berry and so on, and ironically, I wound up doing the eulogy at Chuck's funeral, which was heartrending and just emotional. The Berry family asked me to get up and say a few words
Huh?
on what Chuck meant, but without black music, especially the Beatles, the Stones, and the British invasion, would have been a different kind of a thing. It wouldn't certainly have the shape. When we take a look at early Beatles records, they're covering Chuck Berry left and right, the Stones as well. So, and that includes Hendrix and so on. But it even goes back further, uh, Howling Wolf and the real guys that did the blues stuff. Not very good musicians, but they had an emotion that I think these white boys responded to, and then they homogenized it and made their own versions of it. So that was the first music I heard. And certainly when I heard the Beatles, I mean, it changed my life. All of a sudden, music from somewhere else than other than America, because America before the Beatles was so dominant worldwide because of Elvis and a lot of the other groups. Any country you went to, they all sang American songs, the American accent as well. But when I first heard the Beatles, it was a, hey, George, you want to take a guitar? So, you heard this voice that sounded like they hadn't blown their nose in 2 weeks. This kind of nasal, what is that? And the Blumenbuch, what's a Blumenbuch? What is that? But it was astonishing. And the music, the melodies and the stuff, this kind of gestalt, I speak enough German so I can use that. This thing that combined black music, Motown, rockabilly, kind of Elvis inspired music. And when you think about it, all Elvis did was sing black music by a white boy. That's what he did. He used to go to Baptist churches and listen to the Gospels and do his own versions. That. White people don't sing like that.
Mm.
And
So do you think that because you often hear people say like, and not too often, normally music brings people together, but what do you make of those who say, this music was totally just stolen and like kind of make that out to be a negative rather than stolen and built upon? Would you consider that it was completely stolen, or did they do something to make it original and theirs, like the Stones and the Beatles?
combination, all that. Fats Domino and Pat Boone were both on the same label, Imperial Records. And in those days, racism on a real level was still prevalent. This is before the civil rights movement of 1964 and the right to vote and all this stuff. That's not too long ago. And I heard a lot of these stories from Diana Ross, who I lived with, and she told me all the horrifying stories of bullet holes in the touring van that she did. The Supremes were the number one band, even bigger than the Beatles for about a year or so. And they did a tour of the southern states in America. And opening was the Dave Clark Five, who themselves were bigger than the Beatles, the Tottenham sound, that for about a year. They even had their first movie come out before Hard Day's Night, Catch Us If You Can. But they're touring the southern states. There were bullet holes in the touring bus. And, I actually love the sound of my own voice so much that I forgot your question.
Well, the question was whether they had these groups, these famous white groups and brilliant
Oh,
white
stealing or borrowing?
Were they
Well,
stealing, borrowing, or were they adding to and making it their own, so therefore not stealing?
well, I was going to tell you the Fats Domino story where Fats Domino, Pat Boone on the same label,
Ah, yes.
and Fats is playing in a club, and Ain't That a Shame was a big hit that he wrote and recorded, but it was covered by Pat Boone. And Pat Boone did everything, all the black music of the day. Um, Ain't that a shame? You know, he did it very white bread with no soul, but it sold million records. And so an interviewer asked Fats Domino when Pat Boone was there, you know, they were hugging each other and so on. And they asked Fats, don't you feel slighted that your version wasn't the hit? And he said, you see this diamond ring here? I've got Mr. Boone to thank for that. They didn't care. So people on the outside can say what they will, but if your music wasn't ripped off, stolen, like poor Little Richard, who I knew when he was alive, the publishers and you know everybody stole all their money. They barely got paid at all. But
Mm,
musically, what happened is for the first time in history, really, is that young white people, teenagers, were drawn to this music and then sort of made it their own in ways. So you can certainly sit on the sidelines and go, you borrowed our culture, you borrowed our music, you did that, or you stole it. Yeah, there's a case to be made for that. On the other hand, I haven't heard of a single black surf band like the Beach Boys. Woo!
very true.
Run, run, get around. What? Yeah, doesn't seem to flow the other way. Real white bread music doesn't seem to go to the black community, but uh, white kids, white teenagers are really still. I mean, when you hear rap, even today, and you hear a car pull up on the red light, and you hear boom, 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 it's walking down the street, we go, you know, the talking stuff. You look over, people who look like you are going, yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm not doing that too often, I have to say. But the thing with stealing stuff, um, recently, especially in England, although in America, supposedly they never broke in America, but they're selling out stadiums. Oasis have just reformed, and I was wondering what you make of
Oh,
Oasis.
they're terrific. But if anybody can point fingers at anything, it would be the Beatles,
Yeah.
you know. But
Are they totally are they totally like a rip-off of stuff? You know, like cigarettes and alcohol
well, look,
is fed on by T-Rex.
everybody. Uh, no, they're the people at the end of the day, that American ideal of the people, for the people, by the people, they speak. They speak louder than critics or somebody's always on the sidelines making a point. But validation, whether it's a beauty contest, you know, you can have Simon and X Factor or, you know, Britain's Got Talent. And so you have to bend your knees, as we all do, you, me, and everybody else, politicians, leaders, rock stars. The people decide everything. And we can grumble all we want. Yeah, but I think they should. Well, you think good, but they're
No one
selling
else
out.
cares. Yeah.
Pardon?
No one else cares about this type of comment. I mean, I for one am a huge Oasis fan,
Me too.
and I think all of this stuff when people say these negative comments like bands like the Beatles and the Stones stole black music and Elvis even Oasis ripped off it, as you say, the people decide and they are adding something. They're being original. But one aspect of stealing music that you've been pretty outspoken about is the evolution of the industry and how streaming and the whole model, the business model
Well,
is.
that is outright stealing because it prevents the people who create the music, the artists, from getting paid. It is interesting to note that if you were a bricklayer, you know, people who build houses, and if you work with your hands and do something, there's a minimum wage. There's a law that says you get paid, you work an hour, you get paid a certain amount. And then there are pregnancy leaves and, you know, all these extras and vacation, paid vacations. when you're an artist and you create something, there's no minimum wage. There's none. So if you paint a painting, you put in 100 hours or an hour, it's open market, whatever you can get for it. Strangely, not too long ago, there were laws about writers and publishers. If you wrote a song by yourself and you published it by yourself, it went up to about 6 or 7 pennies, American pennies per song, per record, record sold. And if you co-wrote with somebody, you cut it in half. And if there was another publisher like Northern Songs, where the publishers are Dick James Music, published Beatles songs, they hardly did any work, but they took half of the whole song, and then Lennon and McCartney had to split 25% after costs and everything. There wasn't much left. So there's the stealing in the business side, but the creative process likewise. On the surface, it looks very easy to make a lot of money in being a recording artist, no matter what field, whether it's pop, blues, whatever. But there's a lot of skullduggery going on. Always has been. And it seems to be human nature, which is we used to sleep with the doors open. That stopped being a thing a long time ago.
Is there any way of fixing the situation in music, and has it got worse? I read an
Yes,
article yesterday saying
there's only one way.
it was $50
Brutal.
million is the combined total of revenues from the top 10 songs streamed last year. So if you compare that to any other industry, like the top 10 deals in almost any other industry, $50 million would not be a lot of money. So is it actually even worse than 60s, 70s,
Well,
80s?
it's worse because the poor writer or creator of something is by themselves without a minimum wage. What he doesn't have sick leave. He doesn't have he, she, it, trans, take your pick. Doesn't if they get sick, they don't get paid. There's no insurance for. Well, you're a songwriter, so write songs. But the only cure for actual stealing, because streaming and downloading, let's face it, is perhaps right now not legally stealing, but the legislators are designed to legislate. They're not qualified to understand business models. So they don't really understand what the business model is. You create a song and then it gets released, and then 1 billion people download it, and then you wind up with $10,000. And the record companies, who, by the way, are partners, little known secret, Universal is a partner in Spotify, and so are the other record companies, and they get a much higher stake, because you can't beat them. And why? Because the fans who argue that there aren't amazing bands and so on, there are less and less of them today, is because it's a business that doesn't work. Imagine you own a supermarket. You call them supermarkets, do you not?
We do.
Because we're separated by a common language. Know that. Yeah. And you're in business to make a profit. You have to sell a lot of goods to make a profit. Now imagine if your doors were open and people could go in and just pick up anything and pay what you want on the way out. Radiohead tried this. Well, of course, they put in a 2 pence. They put a little penny and walk out. Said you pay what you want. So all of a sudden, the supermarket is out of business. The landlord, the real estate guy, he's out of business because somebody took your stuff. They try to make a profit for nothing. The farmer who tilled the soil and made potatoes and tomatoes and all that, he's out of business because he can't afford it. Entire industries go out of business because the fans, and we love them, because the new fans are trained and fully entitled to get music for almost nothing.
Mm.
Yeah, so
it's never gonna go back.
it will. It will.
You do think?
Only and if and when legislators pass really strict the cost of things. So, for instance, and I don't want to get too violent here, but there's very little robbery in Saudi Arabia. Do you know why? They literally cut
Oh,
your arms off. Yeah.
they just have a strong deterrent on anything that makes a country unsafe. So, and
No, no, it's the punishment. Here's a law. What are the repercussions of breaking a law? So, once upon a time, bootlegging, you put out an unauthorized record, which means the creators and the musicians don't get paid anything. Only the people who make fake versions of the album, they just reproduce them and bypass the Geneva copyright laws and so on. What are the repercussions? You don't barely go to jail and nothing happens. Of course, in jail, it's not always the worst thing. Some people don't mind becoming somebody's girlfriend. It depends on your lifestyle. You know what I mean?
well,
So what are the repercussions? Nothing. So once Napster started, but I give you the following, and remember, it doesn't affect me. Thank God.
mm,
Our band started when over 50 years ago when we were still rubbing two sticks together. There were hardly any music shows on TV. We didn't have hit singles, barely any, a few, a handful. And we weren't that kind of band, crazy nights notwithstanding. And so, how does a musician make money then? Well, actually, record companies used to pay you millions of dollars, non recoupable if the record was a complete bomb and didn't make any money, you still kept your millions of dollars in advance, an advance non-recoupable. And if it sold past a million, 2 million, then the record company would get their money back, and then you still had a royalty thing. Well, those days are long, long gone. Most artists, most new artists, and it breaks my heart because there's so much talent out there. New artists put out music for free. I mean, you can go on Google, Schmoogle, YouTube, and all the other fancy words, and hear hundreds and hundreds of thousands of new songs by God knows tens of thousands, perhaps a million new music acts who will never earn a living. They won't be able to do that. Whereas in the old days, record companies and touring, and if you got lucky with a song or an album, you could earn a really good living. But the vast majority nowadays can barely get by. There was a guy who had a song from South Korea, perhaps the first big breakthrough, and it was called Gundam Style. And it
yeah,
was downloaded. Yeah. And it was down, and it was a dance, and he was doing, and they were also, "Hey, Macarena, hey, we couldn't speak the language, but it became a phenomenon. Well, billions of download, and I mean billions. They barely made, I'm making it up, 10, 20, 30, maybe 100,000 at the most, because you're getting something like, and don't quote me, 1/100th of 1 penny per download.
I think I think
What is it?
it's 0.0004p per stream on Spotify, and it's similar on the other
So
service.
in regular human being language, because you aren't a robot, and I'm actually 100 years old, but I look 12 years old. And so what does that,
It's
how many units do you have to sell to make 1 penny?
My arithmetic is not good enough, but basically, if you put it like this, to if you had a million streams, you'd make 4 grand. I mean, it's pretty shit, really, isn't
That's
it? And that four
my,
grand, 70% would go to the label or whoever, because people getting a million streams are usually backed by,
and then you got tax.
and the tax and the cost of the recording. And if you're the
And
artist, you
well,
probably
nowadays the cost of the recording not so much because beep, beep,
people
beep,
making it
beep, beep.
free.
You can have a recording studio on your cell phone. Or, yeah, it's
That's true.
not as much of a thing. But after tax, after you're making nothing. I mean, the amount you mentioned was my wifey's lunch money.
Well, if only the rest of the industry could be so fortunate, Gene. But one
Well,
thing you
again,
mentioned a minimum wage for songwriters.
there should be. That's right. There should be because it's labor,
But
and
how would
when
you
you
fix that with with the rise of AI? Because that's one thing that I wanted to ask you about. Because there are a lot of young people, musicians, who are in a complete state of panic. I mean, it's already not in a great situation for musicians and for writers. Um,
it's just, it breaks my heart. By the way, you can Google Sophie Simmons, our daughter, and Nick Simmons. They're both very successful in the music world. Sophie's got hundreds of songs on Spotify, has written songs for and performs herself. She's an artist, has billboards all over the place. And in the old days, in my day, she would have been many, many millions in her pocket. She would have made a fortune, and she's done okay, but nowhere near the amount. Are you near a computer?
I am, of
Are
course.
you on it?
Well, I have to be. I have to be. Well, I could be on an iPad, I suppose, but
No, I'm on a cell phone. I'm on my cell phone.
well, I'm now.
So if you look up Sophie Sim and just take a look at the images, and you'll see billboards around the world. She's huge. Nick Simmons, our son, writes a completely different music, more sort of Pink Floyd, Radiohead kind of inspired music that's been on TVs, shows, and movies and stuff. And neither of the two kids ever asked for my opinion about anything, which is how you want it to be.
Mhm.
Want to just be, I don't know, enthused, inspired, other big words like gymnasium. But if it wasn't for dad and being able to afford this kind of lifestyle, they'd have to go and get a job, dig a ditch, and do all that stuff to pay the rent because you cannot survive just by being a songwriter.
Do they play live? I mean, I'm sure I'll
Yes,
find out when I do a deep dive and look on YouTube and stuff. So do they regularly play live?
some, but there's just not enough of the business. The catch 22 is you're doing music, which makes you very little money, but you're trying to build up a fan base so that you can play live. Oh, yeah, I know that, that band, and then you go check them out. But it's very tough and it breaks my heart. But let's play a game, all right? I'm going to mention a date, a year before you were born, 1958, okay? And music is vibrant. You got Elvis and so on. From 1958 until 1988 is 30 years, right? During that time, you had Elvis, the Beatles, the Stones, and Hendrix. You had Motown. You had disco, Madonna, Prince, Bowie or Bowie. I mean, you had this big canvas of all kinds of music, some of which, maybe a lot of which, has stood the test of time. Really has. And so you could name at least 100, Pink Floyd, and just they continue to sell um, the guitar, the heavy stuff, AC/DC, maybe Kiss, and Led Zeppelin, certainly, who are bigger now in some ways than they were in the past. So from 1988 until today, 1988 until today is approaching 40 years. Who are the new Beatles? Where's Elvis? Who's the new Beatles? I mean, yes, Oasis, one of my favorite bands, are just kicking up a storm. But that's not an American phenomenon.
Hmm.
It is European, and
There's some pop ones, but rock, not really.
but it ain't the Beatles. The closest thing
What
is
about what about Swifties and Swift Mania or whatever it's called?
the biggest artist of all time by far. And I'm a Swiftie. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you something where you can't leave unscathed. Put in your computer, ready?
Yeah.
Taylor Swift, Taylor Swift,
Yeah.
and then put in Keith Urban,
Yeah.
and then put in Kiss, Kiss, prank, Prank.
Taylor Swift pranks Keith Urban in Kansas
And now
City.
press the video button and just move ahead about 15 seconds into the video.
How did this come about?
Well, her guitar player lives, breathes, and dreams Kiss. And there are a number of artists who are secretly, I don't know why, strangely, like Kiss. Gaga backstage that says Kiss parties, used to dress that way. Lenny Kravitz, I think, was asked to leave school at age 13 because he came in wearing my makeup. Just lots of crazy stories like that. Because we all have our, what we grew up with, and we point to it. For me, it's the Beatles. It's actually more Beatles than Elvis. I wasn't emotionally connected to Elvis. It didn't mean all that much to me. But to the Beatles, Elvis was God.
Did you ever meet the Beatles or any members of the Beatles? And if so, were you starstruck? Because there's some videos of like, you know, I think maybe Eric Clapton and Ozzy Osbourne, especially Ozzy meeting Paul McCartney, and he's super like starstruck.
Well,
And
of
there's the Phil
course.
Collins interview saying
McCart-
Paul was an asshole to him and stuff.
no, that's not so. Paul's never been an asshole to anybody. No.
He seems like he's really nice. It seems like it was just
Oh,
understanding.
well, the answer is that I'll tell you a quick story. In the days when in Hollywood, when they used to have roller skating disco parties, people on roller skates and there'd be lights and disco music. In the shared days when I used to live with that young lady, she'd bring me to her parties, and Jews on roller skates probably not a good idea. So I didn't get it. I was just watching, and everybody was there. Any celebrity, music, movies, and all that. And so sitting by the sidelines watching everybody go by. Oh my God, there's Ursula Andress, and there's so. So then I get up to get a bite of food, and coming towards me are two teenagers. I don't know, 13, 14. One of them was wearing a Kiss T-shirt with glitter. They not glitter, but it was called rhinestones. Yeah, that's what it is. So rhinestone. You know what they are?
Yeah.
It looks like diamonds, but they're fake, and it spells out Kiss. And those were very popular and continue to be. And they walk up, and one of them starts saying, "Oh, I love you," with a British accent. We're big fans and everything. Oh, let's try to be nice and write out an autograph. And all of a sudden, in back of them, walking towards us with me facing, is Ringo. And he comes up to the two teenagers and puts his arms around them, and it says something like, "I hope me boys are," something or other. I couldn't even fathom what was going on. And I remember, I'm telling you, this is the truth. I remember wanting to just slap the faces of these little pricks who were busy talking to me, a nobody, when a Beatle is Zach's father.
Yeah.
It's like, how dare you? And same thing happened. Sometimes I'm out of my skin and watch what a strange life I've had. I'm going, this is insane. So during the late 70s, the Bee Gees were like a worldwide phenomenon, hit after hit and all that. And Kiss were also doing very well. And we're playing in Florida someplace, and I get a phone call from Barry Gibb, who's always been a gentleman, great guy, and what a great songwriter and all that. Gene, you got to do me a favor. I said, you want some tickets? We'll get you some. No, no, no. You've got to come over to my house. We're not far away from, the concert. Going, well, I don't know. We're doing two shows here, and we're busy. No, you got to come over. Okay, well, why is that? Well, my son Stevie won't hear about anything about his father's music because it's got like a religious, you know, his walls are covered by Kiss stuff, and he goes into the kitchen and puts ketchup in his mouth and throws up ketchup like blood.
I could believe that because I saw Barry Gibb at the O2 and Steve was on guitar and you could tell you could see he was more inspired by Kiss and he was more of a rocker than kind of into, disco or early. I mean, the Bee Gees did everything though, didn't they?
Oh,
People just remember them sometimes, not for the Saturday Night Fever stuff and some of the
oh,
disco.
but before that, their output, kind of like the Australian Beatles, if you will, they had that melodic and harmony sound. But uh, so look, my life is such a strange thing that goes all the way back to stuff that was popular before you were born, up to Swifty days. But certainly, okay. So here's the thing. So Taylor, who's talented, super, and everybody loves her, and so do I. The question is the next garage band going to want to say, I've got to form a band just like Taylor Swift? And the answer is no.
Why is it
I
no?
mean,
Because they don't play
because
live?
no, because though the songs are phenomenal and catchy and all that, you can't quite put your finger on the identity, if you know what I mean. So I'll give you an example. As soon as you hear the guitars and drums of an AC/DC song, you say, I know who that is. That's my band.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's Metallica. You can say, oh yeah, jugga, jugga, jugga. You know what that is. And this is not denigrating Taylor because I'm a big fan and she's way, way at the top, pulled more tickets than anybody on the face of the planet. Literally, more tickets than the Pope.
Yeah, you can't argue against that.
But when a song starts, if you don't hear her voice, you don't know. You
Well,
don't know.
that's because she doesn't have like a Taylor Swift band that's particularly recognizable in sound or personnel, or I don't know how often
Well,
she changes her band, but
by,
It's the Taylor show. She's the
by
star.
hook or by hook or by crook, the style. Uh, I say the same thing about rap, which I greatly admire. But when a beat, as they say, starts, you have no idea who's going to start rapping until you hear the voice, because it could be anybody. The
You
Led
could
Zeppelin,
identify some rap producers though, like a Dr. Dre type of beat,
not
or
before you hear the voice. No,
you don't think so?
the track, no. But
I mean, I'm not that much of an expert, but I'm sure you could find some people who disagree with you on that, like, who
what
would.
a new song comes out, and you haven't heard the rapping, the vehicle. How would you know?
I think you
But when
could
you
make
hear,
an educated guess on some rap productions, like if you
I
had a good
respect,
knowledge of the
I
producers.
could disagree more.
Really? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think you might be right. I'm on the fence. I'm just, playing
Well,
devil's
so for
advocate.
instance, when you hear a new song that's a riff inspired song, you know what I mean by a riff, heavy guitar sounds, and a certain boom, 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 a certain kind of point of view about the stuff, you would probably say, oh, yeah, that's Led Zeppelin before you hear, because something about the music is the fingerprint, the identity.
I mean, I would, but I'm more into rock music and music played by bands than I am into rap. And one thing I wanted to ask you is why, because you've touched upon it, but why is that not as fashionable as it was? Because there's something
Well,
about it.
it's the it's the business and who the fans are. So the fans of, and we still haven't answered the questions. Who are the new Beatles? There's Taylor, and who plays guitar and everything. But to answer your question, the people that buy rock, predominantly white, although it's still vibrant in stadiums across the world. Maiden does very well live, and Metallica and so on. But these are old bands. We took Iron Maiden on their first tour. We took Bon Jovi on their first tour. We took AC/DC on their first tour. These are old, and we're old. Took these bands. You can't find a new big rock band. They don't exist because name one if you can think. Foo Fighters. It's a big band.
But they're
They're
very old.
approaching.
They're 90s is when
Yeah,
like
and that's 30 years ago.
it was before the CD died. There hasn't been a big rock band since the CD died.
No. And that has to do with the fans. Who's buying it? So once you could get that music for free, the business model stopped working. Once you get something, in fact, the
But then why
description,
why did that favor pop and rap? Because it's
because
on
because
streaming
the
platforms
younger
now on
because
streaming.
younger pop fans predominantly, there's so many great pop singers. Ariana Grande is really fabulous. She can imitate anybody, a great artist. And there's Dua Lipa and Dua Smipa, and there's a lot of them. But the fan base are young females. So a lot of it has to do with souvenirs. I don't want to come off like Professor Rock, Professor Music, but if you study it, there are reasons why things are happening. If you like that music, oh, I kind of like that. And then there are different business models. So you can actually sell some units if you're a rap band because it's culture. Rap is culture, not just music. In fact, it's more culture, often racial culture, because it talks about us against them, or the world against us. And when culture gets into it, or when like a football team, you understand that because you're Brits.
Mm.
Football or soccer, whatever you want to call it, is not as much a sport as it is flying the colors of their my team. In fact, you're willing to beat the crap out of somebody who roots for the other team. Rooting in America means yay, 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 not a root, which is a sexual, yeah. So in America, they're just football.
So
But
with
for
that
you,
tribal stuff is
it's tribe.
In America, because like this is an insight that I think I've had, but I can't tell whether it's right. Is it like today, people have commented on the division, new president coming in and all of that. Is this tribal stuff? It feels like the new football teams, the new bands is politics. Everything's political now, whatever, and people are really,
because
I
because
hate
of woke.
Democrats, I hate Republic because maybe because of the woke thing. But
It's not about
is this
it's
new,
not about
this
left.
theory?
It's not about left or right, because England's always had this kind of tug and pull. Um, it's about wokeism. It's the idea. I mean, there are comics who won't tour college campuses and universities because they might, do a joke that's going to insult somebody. When in fact, jokes, by the very definition, are at the sake of somebody. Like in the old days, you'd have somebody holding a cream pie, and somebody would come in and you'd smash the cream pie in the face, and everybody would laugh. Now, of course, the person that's get the cream pie in their face doesn't think it's very funny, but the rest of us are hilarious. Well, they stopped doing that.
Maybe once they've calmed down, they should find it funny, or they should have a
Yeah,
thicker
but we don't
skin
we
or
don't
whatever.
care. We don't care. We just think it's funny. And even today, you see this is so sad to say, but it also probably has to do with survival. When you see a woman of a certain girth fall down or something, carrying lots of tomatoes, and get up and the face is covered by tomatoes, there will be a number of people that will laugh, not because they're mean, it's because it's the nature. Gee, I'm glad it happened to them, not me. So jokes and comedians are at the sake of somebody. That's what humor is about.
What do you think of the
Otherwise, what are you
whole
laughing
thing
about?
about? Because I'm a big Ricky Gervais fan. I went to see
Oh,
it.
me too.
I
Me too.
loved the show. Then I read this review in The Guardian that said it was a shit show, but like everybody was laughing. I
That's,
thought it was
that's,
hilarious.
that's true.
And the
What
reason
happened?
he said it was shit is because he was punching down. What do you make of that?
I support it.
Do you think that
I say
do you think there should be rules about who jokes are made by, and is that
no.
logical?
There should be nothing should be off limits. Nothing. Let the audience decide everything. That's what free speech is all about. So you can always have somebody or a group of people. I'm Jewish, and there are Jew jokes all the time, and there are black jokes and Mexican jokes and all that stuff. But the comedian that gets up on stage, uh, you know, treads very carefully in case you might upset somebody. And Ricky is one of the people who doesn't give a fuck. There are not many because he's made a living. He's been able to carve out a niche for himself. It's like if a person of my religious persuasion, uh, how does the joke go? I don't even remember it. What's a Jewish conundrum? Free pork. Uh, it's funny.
Yeah, I mean, I
And
don't think there should be any of these rules.
so what if you're insulted? Who cares?
Do
It's
you
a
think
joke.
that attitudes are going to change now that Trump is coming in and it's like
Oh,
anti-woke stuff is now
oh
in
yeah.
vogue,
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
Mark
There
Zuckerberg
always
is
needs
now
to be.
best friends with Trump, and everybody, all the celebrities are going to eventually decide that woke stuff is over. Do
Oh,
you think that
pretty
happen?
fast. Pretty fast. And they're going to be mean-spirited comics because some of them base their humor on, the shock value. And when nobody's looking, you still laugh your head off. Yeah, there are going to be some comedians who will walk out. I don't put it past Gervais to walk out in a dress and lipstick and do his entire act. You see, you're laughing, do his entire act and completely ignore what he looks like and just
Well,
do the jokes.
Gervais, one of the big things that pissed people off about his new set was the jokes about all the trans stuff and the non-binary stuff, and he just
So
couldn't
what?
give a shit.
Well, welcome to Life on Earth. And by the way,
I thought that was actually the funniest bit of the show, though, and
of course,
that
because
was the clip that people were sharing the most and everything.
it's forbidden, of course. And by the way, for the record, and my trans friends and gay friends, because there's a difference, it's now becoming there could be hundreds of different uh, genders or so say people. And I'm, on the sidelines going, I don't care, live and let live, laissez-faire. And when there's an event in Santa Monica here, the Gay Pride Parade, which I would imagine encompasses lesbians and gay men and bisexual, binary, all the variations, personal choices of how to be happy in life. I'm right at the front of the line going, I don't have to understand it. I don't have to, I want, you should have the right to pick what makes you happy in the menu of life.
Absolutely.
But fuck me if I feel my hands are tied, if I can't have jokes about anything and anybody. By the way, for religious people, if you do a joke about the Pope, Roman Catholics get very upset. By the way, the definition of Roman Catholic in Latin is Catholic means universal, and Roman. So Caesar Constantine, 315 AD at the Council of Nicaea, I know, with some other people of the Christian faith coming from Christo Latin, which means Messiah or King. Don't fuck with me because I will bury you with knowledge. Um, is actually the guy that coined, the phrase Roman Catholic, the Roman universal religion. Not a mention of Jesus. There was a real person, Rabbi Yesu ben Yosef, Jesus, son of Joseph. Of course, you never learn his last name was Ben Yosef, like Benjamin or Ben Hur, because you find out that his father's name is Joseph as opposed to God. How could he be the son of God if his last name is son of Joseph?
No, that I mean that's it's a real
In
conundrum
either case, I found
situation
out,
for Christians to
well,
work out.
we scientists have found out why they could prove he was Jewish,
So
other than the
I don't
fact
think
that,
all Christians would get annoyed, though, you know, like all Roman Catholics would get annoyed, but some of them would get pissed off. And those people who get pissed off about those jokes would be wokies or whatever.
yeah,
And I think that's probably what's going out the window. But for somebody who kind of sees this tribalism and you know you've explained to a certain extent what's caused it. You seem to recognize and you seem to have quite a kind of tribal and fan base, and you seem to recognize that, and you've cultivated that. Is that something that you really miss being in front of? Do you miss playing the
no,
big shows with Kiss?
no, my solo band, Gene Simmons,
I know you've been out on the road with your solo band.
yeah, yeah, having a lot of fun. No big shows, no managers, no nothing, no road crew. We just get up there and rock out like in
No
the old
manager.
days. There's no manager. Me. The way it first started. When you first start a band, there's no manager. What's that about? You just book a gig and show up. And but in answer to your point about tribalism, yes, it is in your favor if you have a fan base that feels like they're connected and they have the flag and the right, like in soccer. That is tribalism. It doesn't have to be mean spirited. It's an identity. Swifty is a culture. They're not just fans of, she stands for something. When you think about it, besides above and beyond the music and the lyrics and so on, and this guy broke my heart and Jake Gyllenhaal, I got along with it. These songs that Swifties love. Yes, I know that stuff. Above that is her as the Jesus of the movement, if you see what I mean. I mean, what's Christianity is a movement, religion without Jesus, right? So you need these leaders, these apostles, at the top to encapsulate what the culture and that thing is about. So the thing that Taylor has is Swifties. What do you call an Ariana Grande fan?
I'm not really sure. There must be. I mean, maybe she doesn't have such a cult-like fan base as the others.
She's one of the, do I think she sings better than almost any of the other singers? Yeah. She's actually more talented than Gaga, I think, is more talented than all the others because
She does
she's
have
actually,
she does have a fan base though.
yes, you got it. Because her songs and her are I was born this way, and so the music is not just, and I don't mean fluff in a bad way, because there's some wonderful fluff stuff. A lot of the British invasion was, hey, little children, well, those are, all these great songs that you sang meant nothing. But when a song is saying you want a revolution, the song is about something.
Mm.
And so people, and if you have a body of work that's about something, you get the beginnings of tribalism. And if you're the embodiment of that tribe, now you got something. Yes, her Gaga's fan base is about that. And of course, she's widened her thing by doing pop, Tony Bennett, and all this stuff. She's the real deal. She's got the musical chops. She can play, sing chanteuse uh, music.
But
She's
she,
the real deal.
from the word go, had those kind of people who defend her to the ends of the earth, like the Swifties and like the Believers. I mean, a lot, and like your fan base, who are probably kind of wondering, are there going to be any plans for this year? A Kiss going to do anything this year? And what do you say
No,
to the people?
last year ago, after we did the final shows where we began like salmon going back to their, spawning grounds, we started in New York at 10 East 23rd Street and ended on 33rd Street at Madison Square Garden. Played a few shows there. And then a wonderful company out of Sweden called Pop House bought, and we welcomed it. They bought the rights, the makeup, and Kiss, the brand. But the end, I'll have you know, is just the beginning. So Kiss is never going to tour and do live shows again. But in the same way that it looks like the death knell of a caterpillar once it goes into its cocoon is really the beginning of something wondrous when it breaks out and spreads these wings and takes to the skies. It's like the phoenix rising out of the ashes. What's about to happen with Kiss in the near future is what we loosely call the Kiss avatars, which is like nothing you've ever experienced and is going to take Kiss to heights technologically and experientially like you've never imagined. Imagine putting virtual glasses, right, where you look down and you could be falling off a cliff or there could be a dinosaur coming to eat you. You're surrounded by this on a caveman's eyes.
Well, I'm
Now imagine this technology where everything disappears with no glasses.
I'm
And
very
I think,
disappointed, Gene, that you weren't when you were talking about the phoenix rising from the ashes and all of that very nice description, that you weren't talking about your recent, or rather, should I say, upcoming appearance on the new Stylistics record, where you're singing a duet.
ah, well, for me, it's full circle because black music is meant so much to me. It begat all popular music on the planet. I don't care if you go Michael Jackson pop, which begat all the boy bands, all the guys dancing. Now they're doing Michael Jackson. Of course, he took it from Sammy Davis Jr., James Brown, and the people that went before. But it's black music. Nobody stopped. Respectfully, nobody. I could get up if the Irish jig where your hands are glued to the side and people are tap dancing and doing that. We love that stuff. Nobody wants to form a band and start tapping up and down and doing that stuff, although I greatly admire it. So you got to say that stuff in this woke world. What's wrong with that? What? You got two
Although
swords on the
I
ground.
don't think the wokies will be defending, traditional Irish
Yeah,
tap
it's
dancing.
no, no, it's not about
Hey,
Irish,
it's
about the
it's
Celts.
actually it's more of a it's more, it depends who you make the joke about. That's really the
Yeah,
thing.
but the jokes should be unlimited. And by the way, in terms of the Irish, who I greatly admire, they believe that they are the lost tribe of Israel. Look it up. Put it in Google. Are the Irish the lost tribe of Israel? The tribe of Dan, D-A-N. Look it up. Are the Irish the
Dan.
lost tribe? What does it say? Read it out loud.
There's a theory that the Celts are descended from one of the 10 lost tribes of Israel, the tribe
That's
of Dan.
correct.
What is the Irish tribe of Dan? The Tuatha De Danann, the
Yeah.
folk of the goddess
It's
Danu.
curious. It's curious politically where Ireland is today, but it's passing. As new people come into positions of power when they go out, the
Well,
tone of culture
Ireland politically seems, well, I don't know
means
if it
nothing.
counts as politically,
Means
but it seems like a good place to avoid tax. So I'm sure a lot of people are very happy about
nothing.
that. I'm not really sure
Yeah,
how
but
that happens, but I
that's
think
finance. It's not.
Apple use it to avoid. Well, finance and politics are very they're inextricably linked, and I've woken up today to a lot of people saying, "Oh, if only I had bought the Trump crypto." And apparently, Trump is like hawking a crypto coin. And I heard, because I watched your recent interview with Ben Shapiro, where you talked about your crypto holdings. So, and this kind of links to music. At this stage, you could just kind of have your feet up in Malibu and do nothing. Why do you keep your finger on the pulse?
Why do I keep my finger on the
Yeah, why do you keep
pulse?
your finger on the pulse, and why do
Well,
you keep up
I
to
like
date?
making money, don't you?
Well, I mean, I've not made as much money as you have, Gene. So I
But
just wondered.
that's beside the point. My question was, I like making money, don't you?
Yes, but my
That
answer
was a
was
halting. That was a halting yes. What the hell does that mean? What are you, a communist?
No, no, no. I just wonder. Sometimes I think when I'm tired, like if I reach a certain point, I'm just going to give up and do nothing. I guess that never happened.
I'll make a deal with you right now. I love it's such a strange life form. I it just bewilders me. Look, what is that point when you make a million, 50 million, 100 million? What is it?
I imagine that it never comes, and that's just a thing that you feel when you're tired.
That's not what I asked. My question was, what is
I
that
had to
number?
guess what the number would be. Um, in today's world, where you would stop completely, 50 million. So
Okay,
we
so
never
you
have.
have 50. All right, but no, that's another subject. That would be out of order. That's not what we're talking about. Is
Right.
what's the number? So 50 million for you, whether it's tax free or not. And I'll make a deal with you right now.
Hmm.
It's enough for you. That's all you need. The very first dollar you make more than 50 million, would you send me all those dollars, please?
Maybe. I'm a very generous
Why
person.
maybe? All you want is 50. So if you're making 100, send me those other 50 because there's no
No,
such.
not because I'm not, I don't only need 50, but there might be other people who I want to send the first cents to. It might not be going to Gene Simmons. It might be going to, my mum,
Yeah,
my
that's right.
brother,
And by the way,
Stanley.
all the people that I'm aware of that I've met uh, that have a lot, and a lot is variable,
Hmm.
do much more charity work than you will ever imagine. Buffett's given away at least half of his fortune, Gates and everybody else, everybody, and yours truly included. I support 1,400 kids in Africa and stuff, not because I'm trying to impress you, but because you can afford to do it.
Hmm.
But one of the problems with wokeism, as far as I'm concerned, is this kind of poo-pooing of, well, you have enough money, you don't need more. Bitch, I never asked your opinion. Who is anybody else to tell me when I have enough? I'm
No,
insatiable.
I think it's good. I think it's also interlinked with like if you're the sort of person that got to that level of success, it's unlikely that, and probably no one
But
ever gets to that stage and that
but
number.
at the core of it is a stunning truth, which is a poor person never gave me a job.
Mhm.
It is only the well-off, the rich, and some who create jobs by
Very true.
virtue of the fact that they have enough money to invest and take the chance of losing all to
Hmm.
give you a job so you can support your family and so on. And wonderful, so on. And Margaret Thatcher, I think, who I was a big fan of, reacted. Somebody said, money is the root of all evil. Bullshit. It is, in fact, the lack of money that's the root of all evil. Meaning, if you have $50 million in your pocket, just like you said you would, why would you go and hold up a 7-Eleven with a gun? Give me $14.95. But there are people that hold up 7-Elevens, sadly, and walk away with nothing.
Hmm.
They're willing to take the chance because they don't have
Nothing.
money. Yeah, it is. You're more apt to commit crime if you're dirt poor. Doesn't mean you should.
But yeah, you're more likely to. Well, I agree wholeheartedly that we should, and particularly in the UK, which you had no comment on earlier, I think we would do well in our country to try and celebrate success a little bit more and to try and not kind of have this thing that money is evil and
I,
that success is
I
evil.
don't know what, but without money, when you go to church and the hat goes around and passes, you can't put money in because you can't afford it. I don't understand. I still don't. And which reminds me of a wonderful story about a Catholic priest and a Jewish rabbi, and they're in a rowboat together, and the priest says, Rabbi, we're men of God. And the rabbi says, I'm glad you said that. It's a wonderful thing to say. And I agree. And the priest says, I hope you don't mind me saying so, but I noticed when you paid for this rowboat that we're in, you had a big wad of cash, you know, British currency. Where'd you get all that money from? He goes, oh, I'm sorry. In our temple, I make a speech and then we pass the hat, don't you? And the priest says, of course. When I give a sermon, we pass the hat. But I give the money to God, don't you? And the rabbi says, of course. I take the hat full of money and I throw it to heaven, and whatever the guy doesn't want, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, but give the cash to me, bitch.
Well, I agree, and I won't be giving you a single cent when I make my 50 million.
Oh, what did I ever do to you? I'm a nice guy. You should.
I'm sorry about that, Gene, but I'm going to
But
continue.
let me do you a favor, because you're should be proud to be involved in the new Stylistics record. And I want to say it's one of those bands. There was that it was a certain time in history when pop and black harmonies destroyed. There was that Philly soul sound. There were quite a number of bands. The Stylistics were certainly at the top of that pile. And it's such a source of pride. Some delusional person someplace, I'm trying to point towards you, I guess, asked me to come and sing on the record. And boy, what a joy that was. That was just great. It means an awful lot to me. More than just, I'm a, Robbie Williams called and I'm going to be on the B side of this. And no, this is the Stylistics. No offense to Robbie, by the way.
Well, Robbie was actually on a plane that I took out of LA, but thank you recently, which was nice to see him. And I had an insatiable urge to start singing Angels very loudly, which I didn't because of my wife. But in any case, I thank you.
Strangely in America, I mentioned Robbie and the monkey movie and stuff, and almost everybody I mentioned to, strangely and curiously, didn't know what I was talking about, didn't know who Robbie was. It is a
It
cultural
didn't.
divide.
It didn't. It hasn't got a very successful. It hasn't had a very successful opening weekend at the
No,
box office. I haven't seen it yet.
it's a bomb,
Yeah.
because Americans have the attention span of a gnat. You have to understand, America invented movies, television, rock and roll, blues, jazz, and it was all started here by the underclass. In Europe, it's about, symphony orchestras and stuff. So the upper class, right? And Europe has always been about good taste. And America has always been about simply what tastes good. So America invented fast food and all that stuff. You have chefs. Well, that's a European idea. The idea of a chef, somebody who says, "No, this is the proper way to do this." Fuck your proper. I want to do a hamburger, slop it out. Quick, instantaneous gratification. There's a big cultural divide.
Mm.
And
But Robbie Williams is, it's not like
too British, and I love the stuff. I used to listen to Take Back, well crafted, great songs. Uh, Something about it is too British. It didn't follow. It,
more so than Oasis, because like Oasis, people said they never
but
cracked
but
America when they're playing
but
stadium.
well,
Robbie, I don't think
more,
would.
much more than a lot of other big English bands. They did okay here, but not big time. I'll tell you a quick story. I was checking in, and I finally figured out years ago he was pulling my leg, taking the piss. Is that what? Over here, taking the piss means you take a bucket, you fill it with piss, then you take it someplace. So, checking into a hotel in Philadelphia, I remember distinctly. And on the way in, I turned to my right, and I remember it was to my right, and there's Liam. And I think it was, yeah, I'm sure it was Liam, not no. And he goes, "Oi, oi, Gene." I don't want to do the accent. Uh, I'm a big fan and everything. My wife listens to oh, that's very sweet of you. I really love you guys and the stuff, and not just Wonderwall or anything. And I don't care what anybody says about George Harrison's Wonderwall album title. I still love the stuff. I love your voice and all that. It's just great. He goes, "Yeah, we love you so much that I named my son Gene after you." He goes, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, we have two sons. We have Lennon and we have Gene." I'm going, "Lennon for like
Like,
John Lennon?" I don't remember if it was for Lennon or the Russian Lennon.
I'm pretty sure John.
Pretty sure it was John. And I said, "You're kidding." He goes, "Nope." And so years later, I happened to mention that story to somebody, and they said, "Are you out of your fucking mind? He was pulling your leg. His son's name is Gene, but why would he name his son after you?" That's great. That's a great story.
Was he pulling your leg?
Well, I didn't
Honest thing,
recognize.
he definitely named it for John. Maybe he did name Gene after you. I think Gene's in a band. Gene Gallagher's in a band who I've been meaning to listen to too, and probably suffering from the same thing that you mentioned earlier
Oh,
of
heartbreak.
everybody. You know, it's just all so oversaturated.
Oh my God, it's so hard. It's so horrible for new bands, and I'm sure there's so much talent out there, but they'll never get the chance that we got.
Well, I think it's very encouraging for younger people trying to make it to hear some kind of analysis and explanation of the situation from you, because you've done it before and you've had success. And I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. And the final question for you, you mentioned music, you know, in America, pop music has just got to taste good. It's just got to feel good. What are a couple of tracks off the top of your head that you think the listenership and the audience might not have heard that you would recommend going to check out? Just off the
I would recommend Roots. When you see a tree above ground, you obviously marvel at the foliage and the apple and so on. You don't see the wonder of the miracle that is the roots underground. You don't see that because the roots not only give life, to the tree. I don't want to get too poetic here, but it is a point about anything, whether it's your lineage, your culture, your music, anything. It's the root. Without roots, you don't have trees, apples, nothing, because they get the minerals and the water, and they make the tree possible and the fruit. But people are not aware of it because it's underground. It takes work. It's much easier to just lean back and let something wash over you. No, I'm saying do the work. It'll make your experience of music so much richer. So find out who it is that these people grew up listening to. I don't mean one generation, just older. So I would recommend, if you're a pop band, listen to black pop. Go out, check and find out. Look up Jackie Wilson, Baby Work Out. It'll blow your socks off. Like the kind of music you want, the joy of a certain kind of singing that's physical, not just singing along with somebody's on stage, you sing along. That's okay, but it's one dimensional. And there are artists, and you like bands with stage presence. I'm reminded of a movie that came out, the first concert movie. It was called The Jam Show. I don't remember the title. And it was James Brown and the Rolling Stones and so on. Well, the Stones were just coming up, and the Stones were headlining. And right before the Stone, James Brown came on. And to tell you that these white kids with these pale faces have never seen or experienced anything like this, you should look it up. What was it called? The Jabba Show, something. And he comes out and does splits, and yeah, and then baby, please don't go. A guy comes on, puts a cape on him, and he starts. They're singing in the background, don't go, and he's going off because of a broken heart, and then he starts to stomp his feet and throw the uh, tape off his thing. No, 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 no. And he goes back to the center and takes that microphone and makes love to it on like it's a beautiful girl. It's like these little blonde-haired white girls are going, oh, what's going on stage. Then he drops to his knees and starts pumping, the microphone. Baby, please don't, baby. It was like, like you're possessed. And then they go off, and you see Jagger. There's a close-up of Jagger, God bless him, always been a fan, and he's off stage going like this. He's chewing on his nails. And before that show, the Stones were the Stones and Jagger was Jagger. After that show, Jagger was never the same. So it was about the end of 64. After that, all of a sudden, Jagger had this kind of dance state, this kind of cocky stage kind of thing. He's doing James Brown
Mm,
to
mm,
this
yeah.
day.
Well, he was
He
such
won't
a
admit it,
fan.
but
He ended up
he's
producing
doing James
a movie.
Brown.
There was a biopic about James Brown that Mick Jagger produced, and I want to go back and look at that footage, and I'm sure a lot of people will, because he's just one of a kind. And I've heard a lot of stories about him. Jack, the stylistics manager, who's just turned 90, was James Brown's manager for a long time.
Oh boy.
Described a lot of things that I've not seen this clip. I've heard it described, and we're going to
You can actually Google and schmoogle and all this other stupid words. You look it up and you say Mick Jagger off stage watching James Brown do a thing. It'll come up. You'll go,
That was the
oh.
moment that it all changed for him. Because before he used to just
Um,
stand there, didn't he? Like the other groups,
well, he would just stand there and sing. Then
lightly.
he came out, and all of a sudden, white people can't dance. So he started coming at not no disrespect to Mick. He comes out and starts doing a white version of that. And to this day, he still does that because it's not enough to just,
You got to
sing a
perform.
Gregorian chant. And meantime, James Brown is having, a kind of he's possessed. You see sweat falling out. He's grimacing at that. And meantime, the British bands who we love, the Beatles and everybody else, sing the songs, and the heads barely move. The most person in the Beatles who moved his head the most was Ringo. At least it was that lack. No, James Brown would fall on the floor and have a conniption. Do you have that word in the British language?
Conniption.
Yes.
I mean, I'm googling that. That's not a word that I've heard. Yeah, it's
Well,
a fit of rage or hysterics. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, It's not something that is easy to imitate, though. In fairness to Jagger, but you can see that it derives
I
direct.
mean, it happened immediately because the Stones went on after James Brown. He's no longer at the microphone. He's doing this stuff. Yeah. And by the way, it's all great. It's all fine. And
Yeah.
when you see other artists before Jackson did the moonwalk backwards, it's been around a long time. You should look up, and I used to go to his house, Sammy Davis Jr. You ever hear of the guy?
Hmm. Part of the
Well,
rap, but
well,
he's the one
part
that
of the
I've
rap,
listened to,
but
the one that I've listened to the least, though, and he's the one who seems to have had less of the marketing machine behind him than Dean Martin and Sinatra.
well,
I need to
well,
listen.
in those days, there was no such thing as marketing. If you had a hit song or if you had looks, Martin and Sinatra had the looks, so the chicks and so on. But it bears noting it was Sammy Davis Jr. who bedded down Kim Novak and Miss Sweden, not the other guys. But let me give you one. 7-year-old, put this in, 7-year-old Sammy Davis Jr. live.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Was
And
this
then
released in 1933, or is that just the title of the movie?
no, 1933, filmed in 1932 with the advent of sound.
Right.
People don't know that there was a racial divide. So there was the Chitlin circuit. You know what Chitlin is? Chitlin are the guts. It's like blood pudding that in some parts of it, it's just the kishkas, as they say, the cheapest part of the meat of a pig, the insides. That was a popular thing with poor people, in other words, black people. So you'd have the Chitlin circuit because they couldn't play in high class white places. And you had the great artists that became national and worldwide influencers coming out of the Chitlin circuit. B.B. King and Little Richard, Chuck Berry, James Brown, they all played there. There was no place else to play. And over there were no rules. You could curse, you could do whatever you wanted to. It wasn't like, why
And
do
that
all
was on the
this? So
Chitlin circuit.
the Chitlin circuit. So
Right.
all of a sudden you have a black piano player who was actually, as they say, pitched for the other team, who used to actually look. His best friend was a prostitute. He used to look through the hole. This is all true because I knew Little Richard. He looked through the hole of a wall where he'd have a little room and watch his friend, who was a woman prostitute, service her customers that day, although he pitched for the other team. And so all of a sudden, here's a piano player who puts his feet up on the piano and starts playing like somebody who's possessed. Only in the Chitlin circuit. Try doing that in the White House. I beg your pardon. £5. I won't pay it. There I was in India, surrounded by,
The
the
Chitlin
proper thing.
circuit was where everything that was to come in pop culture came from.
Everything was okay, including having sex on stage.
Has that
See,
happened?
look at your little pale face, just going, I beg your pardon.
Well,
Yes,
it's just I'm reminded of a clip of Piers Morgan Uncensored. That's the
he
only
had sex on stage too.
no, but he was commenting. I mean, that would be I would be very horrified and shocked if that was to but he was
No, I
he
know.
was debating the Sam Smith stuff.
Well, imagine
Hey,
imagine a place doesn't have ventilation, where you have 20 or 30 people crammed into a wooden, rotted thing in the southern states where there's barely any light or electricity, and everybody works really hard in the racist environment. The worst part of society can barely feed themselves. The food isn't healthy, and so on. And men are assholes. They leave their pregnant girlfriends and run off. And just the worst of stuff. And what is the respite? What is the thing where you let your guard down and relax? You drink until you can barely stand up, and you go listen to music that you can't hear anywhere else. And people are crammed in together where you don't have to make excuses about being black, where everybody's black and you get to listen to your music. It's culture. And, it's like it's a religious, semi religious experience, but also sexual, where the girls are hiking up their skirts and they're dancing and walking off to the corner to service guys who, it's,
well, the Chitlin circuit sounds a lot better than the current what seems to be becoming the norm, which is the boring corporate circuit for everyone, even people in poor areas. So I hope that the Chitlin circuit comes back, and I'm looking forward to uh, checking out some of these routes recommendations, some of which I was familiar with, some of which I wasn't. And I really thank you, Gene, for coming on the podcast, and of course for being on the new Stylistics record. And yeah, great to have a conversation with you. Thank you for very much for your time today.
I wish you the
The
best. And
Chitlin
remember,
circuit.
and remember, once you get past 50 million, give me any dollar you don't want. It'll make me happier.
No,
In fact,
Gene, I
in
will not
fact,
give you
oh,
any
come on.
the
Come on. What did I ever do to you?
no, you've just given me some excellent advice, which is that $50 million is not going to be
It's
enough.
never enough. Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. Elon's worth about $450 billion, more than some of the third world countries have a gross domestic national product. He makes more money than some countries. He gets up every day and goes to work and tries to make more money.
I think
That's what
I'll need to change industry though to get to 50 million after the rest of our conversation. Seems like music is not really a good fit. So I'm going to now start Googling what these guys are into, and maybe trying to copy them, because it's unclear what Elon's really into. Is he now into politics, or is he into rockets?
but everything for him is business.
Politics is a business.
Certainly is. The friendlier he gets with Mr. Trump, who I knew before he became a political animal, the more military contracts he gets to make rockets and God knows what else. Yes.
Yeah, it's a very
Politics is business.
Very wise thing. Well, I'll look forward to our next conversation when I'm worth 50 million and I'm in politics. And thank you so much. And speaking of the Chitlin circuit, I better try and avoid the authorities here at the DoubleTree Hilton because I've already extended my stay here. So wish me luck and farewell, Gene. Thank you very much for a good conversation.
All the best.
Take care.